A Beacon in the Dark by No Haijiachi. Chapter 13. Crash and burn! And enemy search. Maybe he should actually listen to Aizawa and go get himself a prescription for some kind of sedative. The way his heart is going madly in his chest cannot be good for him. He just heard through the grapevines that Endeavor managed to catch the hero killer in Hosu. The news had been very uplifting, one less thing to be worrying about. Then Gran Torino called. Toshinori looked at the caller ID for a good 10 seconds before taking a deep breath and answering. The first thing that came out of Gran Torino's mouth was, "Your kid just fought and won against the hero killer." Toshinori was sure he was just about to spit out a lung. Granted, he wasn't alone. There were Todoroki's son and the kid of the Idas with him. Still, that brat managed something I couldn't really believe he could possibly do at his current level.
Young Todoroki had Ida too.
Toshinori exhaled, feeling his head light.
What even?
Gran Torino filled him in with what has happened, finishing with an exasperated, "I can't believe that kid. The way he moves his feet before his brain is just like him."
He has that tendency, yes.
Toshinori sighs, a hand on his forehead.
I'm sorry, it must have been troubling. My teaching has been incredibly inadequate.
"You can say that louder," Gran Torino grumbles before continuing. "Listen, this whole hero killer business is very troubling and I have a bad feeling about this." Toshinori listens as Gran Torino explains his theory, frowning, his entire body shivering when Gran Torino says in a low voice, "I'm afraid All For One might be behind this." He has to force himself to calm down, feeling a drop of sweat running down from his temple.
I refuse to believe he could possibly still be alive after that wound.
Gran Torino hesitates, white noise filling Toshinori's ear for a second, before he continues. "Toshinori, that boy absolutely adores you. You must tell him as soon as possible everything regarding you and One For All. You owe him that much at least." Toshinori closes his eyes, frowning. The smile that the boy had given him during the festival after telling him that he now knew how Toshinori looked like resurfaces from his memories. Traitorous! "Take care of yourself. You don't want to go and break that boy's heart now, do you?" God damn it.
I know.
He sighs, a trembling hand covering his eyes.
I know.
There's another bout of silence. Then, in a lighter, more casual tone, Gran Torino says, "Speaking of which, a blind boy? Really? You always had the tendency to pick up strays from the side of the road, but still. And for how much he loves and respects his old teacher, Toshinori feels a sting of anger at that."
He's perfectly capable.
The laugh through the receiver interrupts him. "I just wanted to poke some fun at you, Toshinori. Overprotective as always. Don't worry, the boy's fine. He's got heart aplenty and brains when he wants to. Would be better if he used it a bit more before acting, though." Toshinori deflates on his couch.
Right. That was a cruel joke, though, Sensei.
He replies with a lopsided smile, accidentally slipping into the old honorific.
I guess I will have to have another chat with young Midoriya at the first occasion.
A sniff. "You do that. In the meantime, I'll try to cram some common sense into that stubborn head for the rest of the time we have left."
Good luck with that.
He can't help but reply, releasing a little laugh at Gran Torino's groan. When they closed the call, Toshinori let his arm fall down at his side, still holding the phone. With the other, he covers his eyes, head resting on the back of the couch. It was not the joint effort of his rapidly disappearing One For All, his collection of wounds, and All For One to finally do him in. Young Midoriya might just be the source of his untimely demise. Being a teacher is hard. Izuku could not hide that he was a bit disappointed that he ended up getting the rest of his work experience week cut short since Gran Torino's teaching permit had been revoked. His fault, too. But with what has happened, it was kind of inevitable. It had been sad, too, to discover about Ida's hand receiving a possibly permanent damage, but his friend took the news in stride with a renewed resolution to become a great hero. They made a promise to keep going forward together, And together they laughed at Todoroki's weird joke of being a hand crusher that turned out not to be a joke at all, in his opinion. Seriously, Izuku was so relieved to discover more and more that Todoroki was truly just a very silent, awkward dork. Soon enough, he had to say bye to Gran Torino, and for how harsh the old man had been on him, Izuku still had a great deal of respect, realizing how much he learned. That's why he couldn't deny that as he stood outside Gran Torino's house, his costume under an arm, he did feel a bit sad. "Thank you so much for everything, sir," Izuku says with a little bow. "It's only thanks to you if I've been able to hold my own against the hero killer. I've learned a lot." Gran Torino's cane thwacks against his legs.
Don't get in over your head, kiddo. You got lucky. The man wasn't fighting you seriously.
He reprimands.
Still, it's a good thing you've managed to control your damage output during the fight. Now, if you could exert that control on your own impulses and not jump into dangerous situations like an idiot, that would be for the better.
Izuku scratches the back of his head, embarrassed, as Gran Torino adds,
If you really want to become as strong as All Might, then you still have a lot of work to do, kid. Don't relax.
"I know," Izuku replies, serious, before giving the man a little smile. "Well, I guess it's time to go." He turned, starting to walk away with a little limp. He hopes Recovery Girl will accept to cure the wound on his leg. When Gran Torino called after him,
Kid, who are you then?
Izuku turns perplexed, thinking the old man is trying to play another trick on him before his mind connects the dots. "Oh!" he says, a grin breaking on his mouth. "It's Deku!" He has the distinct impression that Gran Torino is smiling at him. Izuku, Ida, and Todoroki ended up naturally gravitating toward one another once back at school, which really wasn't all that surprising considering what kind of experience they shared. They were chatting between themselves with quiet voices by Todoroki's desk as the class excitedly shared with one another their respective experiences during the week. Izuku heard Kirishima and Sero laugh almost hysterically as Gachan's light emitted pure rage after he entered the class. "Why are they laughing like that?" Izuku asks, perplexed. There's a beat of silence before Todoroki answers in a calm, composed tone. "It's Bakugo's hair. He looks like he had a cow licking his head. It's ridiculous." "Oh, that would explain it," Izuku replies, distracted. Maybe in another situation he would have laughed at the mere thought, but hearing the cheerful voices of most of his classmates happily sharing their experiences made him realize yet again just in which kind of dangerous situation he, Todoroki, and Ida had been. He didn't feel particularly afraid, but he just didn't feel like laughing either.
You three, though.
He hears Kaminari say, clearly continuing from some kind of prior discussion as he turns to face them.
You are the one that changed the most. Especially you, Midoriya. You look dead serious right now.
"You're the hero killer?" Sarah intervenes from somewhere in front of the class, his voice slightly muffled.
That must have been scary.
"I'm just glad your eyes are okay," Kirishima added. "You got rescued by Endeavor, right?" Izuku turns toward Todoroki, his mouth thinning in a line. But Todoroki is perfectly calm as he says, "Yeah, we got rescued." "When I saw it on the news, I couldn't believe it," Ojiro says, pensive. "To think a man like that could possibly be working with the League of Villains."
"That's pretty scary for sure,"
Kaminari continues, distracted.
"But I have to admit, watching those videos, the man was kind of cool."
"Kaminari!" Izuku interjects, frowning. It's clear his classmate realized the slip, his light rippling with regret and shame. But Ida is impassive as Kaminari apologizes.
"I can understand why people would consider the strength of his convictions cool," he says, voice low. "But he went with it in the worst possible way, and that is unforgivable. That is why I will keep walking the path of becoming a hero with renewed strength."
Kaminari is still apologizing as Izuku pets Ida's shoulder a couple of times, giving him a knowing little smile. Later that afternoon, after All Might explained which kind of exercise they were going to do, Izuku found himself a bit excited at the prospect of showing him his progress. All the classmates he's racing against are fairly fast and agile. Zero especially will be advantaged by the terrain, and Izuku knew that Ida would give it all, even if he was probably still recovering from the battle. But Still, Izuku wants to show off a bit. The terrain offers him a huge variety of perches to jump to and from. As he activates One for All at his lower gradient, he promises himself he won't touch the ground a single time until he has reached the objective. When the start is given, he dashes in a jump, barely landing on a pipe, boosting himself again with just the tip of his feet. He manages to jump from point to point in the little mental course he studied while observing the terrain, feeling agile and flexible. In comparison to the way he felt during the festival, where his body was constantly taut with the exertion of keeping One for All at bay, this was paradise. It's exhilarating in a sense, almost like flying. He's really actually having fun. Of course, that is the moment he slips. Literally. He ends up miscalculating his footing and manages to hang from the pipe he slipped on by a thread. As he rushes to climb up and restart his run to the objective, Sero already caught up and surpassed him, claiming the first place right in front of Izuku's eyes. Oh man! He moans as he lands on the platform, Ida, Ojiro, and Ashido rapidly following. That was a good one, Midoriya. You almost made it before me. Sero comments cheerfully, giving him an energetic pat on the back. Nice moves.
You have all improved the use of your quirks considerably. Good job.
All Might says in his usual booming voice. Then, as Sero and Ashido friendly banter between themselves, he approached Izuku, whispering,
You did very good. I almost did not recognize you. Come to my office later. There's something exciting to tell you.
Izuku sighed. Surely All Might wanted to scold him for acting so recklessly that night in Hosu. And yet, as the little chimes only Izuku could feel vibrated gently back and forth in him, he could not help but feel that whatever All Might wanted to tell him would be much, much more serious. Say, Midoriya. Todoroki approaches him quietly in the locker room, voice low. The moves you've shown today, have you learned them from that old fast guy you went to for your work experience week? He can hear the other boys bicker about one thing or the other, and he has the distinct impression Todoroki is purposefully keeping his voice low for a reason. Izuku wondered if Todoroki saw right through him and his newfound abilities. It wouldn't be surprising. Then again, it was inevitable that his new, rather flashy talents would pique his classmates' curiosity. He had to face the music one way or the other. Yeah, you could say that, he replies with a little strained smile. Todoroki hums, not adding anything else. When he enters into the office and All Might asks him to lock the door, Izuku knows that something is not right. He obeys, silently sitting in front of his mentor as he clearly fidgets nervously.
Young Midoriya, I already told you the story of One for All,
he says. Izuku can feel how tense he is, can feel a pool of dark thoughts and feelings in All Might's stomach, like they are in his own.
I also told you of All for One, and of how I fought him 5 years ago.
Yes, Izuku replies slowly when the silence stretches.
I thought that story ended.
All Might says.
I thought wrong.
Izuku flinches. From the story All Might told him the day he asked him to take the mantle of One for All, it was clear in the man's voice that the idea that dark, towering danger was out of the picture was a great relief for him.
I do not know how that is possible, but chances are that All for One is still alive, and pulling the strings behind everything that has been happening lately.
A beat of silence.
You had more than a taste of his schemings yourself, after all.
Of course, it was reasonable that All Might was this tense. He clearly was worried for Izuku, now that he had passed One for All to him. Knowing him, the man was probably feeling guilty of having to put this burden on Izuku's shoulders. Izuku takes a deep breath. I understand, he says, voice leveled. I understand, and the prospect is scary, not gonna lie, but... He takes a moment to gather his thoughts, weigh his words. But I have accepted the responsibility, and I want you to know that I will always answer your call, no matter what. Izuku forces a smile on his face, wanting to try to lift his mentor's spirit a bit up. As long as you are with me, I will not be afraid, so don't worry about me, okay?
Somehow, that seems to have the polar opposite effect. He can feel All Might flinch, something dark squirm in his chest, and then the man rises on his feet, walking a few steps away. He hears his breath trembling in his throat like he's trying not to cry.
There's nothing I wish more right now than to be able to lie to you.
He says, voice strained.
There's nothing that I wish more than to be a coward and let you live in bliss and ignorance as long as I possibly can.
Something weird is happening. Izuku can feel All Might's distress like a bitter poison in his mouth.
But this link that you have with me does not allow me that.
All Might continues.
You will know if I lie. You always will know, my boy.
There's a long silence, hesitation hanging in the air.
You need to know.
A deep breath.
When the day comes that you will face the dark, I might not be by your side anymore.
Izuku's mind goes completely blank for a second as a keen, unbearable sting of pain in his chest freezes him. Like something inside him broke. Oh. It was his heart. When Toshinori turns around, he tries to convince himself he's ready to face Midoriya. But he's not. The boy is on his feet, looking at him with wide eyes, the perfect picture of distress. What? His voice is tiny. What are you saying?
I've been through much.
Toshinori explains, willing his voice to be steady.
So has my body. I simply do not know for how long I will still be able to live.
Young Midoriya squeezes his eyes shut, hands shooting at the sides of his face, covering his ears, a childish gesture. Stop! He yells. This isn't funny! Toshinori wants nothing more than to take this boy and squeeze him in a hug and apologize to him for all the pain he's putting him through and never let him go, but he knows he can't. Still, he takes a careful step forward, stretching his hand toward him, but before he can ever reach over, Midoriya slaps his hand away, his eyes now full of tears. They stare at each other in silence, and he knows the boy is searching him, maybe for the sign of a lie, maybe for confirmation. A sob escapes Midoriya's lips as big tears finally roll down his round cheeks, his features twisting in desperation. He turns on his heels, shooting for the door, and in his distress doesn't even realize it's still closed. Not that he needs to, as he's now strong enough to simply force it open with a loud bang and run out, away from Toshinori. Toshinori doesn't follow, his legs giving in. He slides on the floor with his back against the wall.
I'm sorry.
He sobs, his eyes stubbornly remaining dry, shivering hands against his forehead.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
Ochako caught up with Ida, finding him in the company of Todoroki, unsurprisingly. Boys, wait for me! She said, the two of them stopping and turning to her. Today at lunch, Todoroki had joined them once more. It seemed like their little trio was well on the way to becoming a quartet. Not that she'd mind. Todoroki had changed so much since the festival. He was clearly more relaxed and less standoffish, and it seemed that Midoriya highly enjoyed his company. For her, the more friends she made, the better. Where's Midoriya? She asked once she had walked up to them. Todoroki shrugged as Ida said, I don't know, he just disappeared. You know how he is. She did. Their friend had this tendency of just disappearing out of thin air every now and then. She had no idea for which reason, but usually he would come back in a good mood, so she didn't feel the need to pray. That's why it was very surprising when they walked into Midoriya at just the next corner. Or better, crashed. Midoriya came at full speed, crashing directly into Ida that lost his balance, falling down on his behind. Midoriya, what gives? He started to ask before the words died in his throat. Midoriya was scrambling to get back up on his feet, pale, shivering, big tears rolling down his cheeks, an expression of pure shock on his face. Ochako froze, Midoriya stumbling back up and past her. Todoroki grabbed his wrist on the fly. Midoriya,
he tried to say, but Midoriya, keeping his face turned away from them, tried to free himself from the grip. Todoroki did not let go, getting himself dragged unwillingly forward a good meter as he stood his ground. His other hand closed around Midoriya's wrist as well. "Stop! What's wrong?" And then Midoriya let out a whine like a wounded animal and fell down on his knees, a puppet that got its string cut. He started sobbing pitifully, folding on himself. Not only that, she realized. His breath was short and irregular, loud, like Midoriya was trying to gulp in air and failing. Todoroki hesitated a bit before gently letting his wrist go. He circled around Midoriya, bending on his knees in front of him. "Midoriya," he said, voice low, gentle. "Breathe. You need to breathe. Follow me, okay?" He put his hands on Midoriya's shoulders, counting to him, trying to guide Midoriya's breathing as if he was an expert on panic attacks. A distant little voice cut through the fog of her shock, suggesting that maybe he was. She stood there stupidly, unable to move a single finger, watching the shivering back of one of her best friends as he tried to breathe, loud, painful sobs shaking his entire frame as if someone was stabbing his back over and over. For the first time in her life, she looked at him and realized just how small and fragile this smart, brave person she had learned to care for so much and so fast really was. How small and fragile all of them really were. Something was wrong. Aizawa launched another look around his class. He just explained the plan for the summer break that was to come in a month, informing his students that those who were to fail the end-of-term tests would end up in a remedial class and won't be able to go to the camp. He received the expected reaction, a mix of excitement at the prospect of the summer break, fear for the tests, and enthusiastic support to one another. But something was wrong. It was like Midoriya was not really there. He was pale, his mouth a small, unhappy line. Despite his condition, his eyes were usually lit up and active and full of life. But not now. He kept his head low all the time, shoulders drooping forward, eyes scarily empty. He wasn't really there. A ghost. And not only that, Todoroki had basically been staring at the back of Midoriya's head the entire time, his face an unreadable mask. He hadn't stopped doing that even for a second. From the other side of the room, Ida and Uraraka were doing the same, with an added exchange of a worried little look to each other every now and then. Something was clearly wrong. The bell rang, and excited teenagers started to stand and pick up their bags, chatting between each other as they made their way out of the class. Before the four outliers could leave, Aizawa said in a maybe too severe voice, "Ida, Uraraka, Todoroki, Midoriya, you stay."
"Oh, someone's in trouble,"
Kaminari sing-song before tearfully waving at the four of them and exiting the room. Bakugo launched a little look to Midoriya from over his shoulder, rolled his eyes, and left as well. The class was empty except for the five of them at that point. Aizawa sighs. "Come here," he says, walking around the desk to stand in front of them, leaning back on it, arms crossed. Ida, Uraraka, and Todoroki exchanged a silent, pointed look before standing. Midoriya stood from his seat in a way that suggested about 1,000 tons of rocks were hanging from his neck, face still pointed at the floor. He made his way to stand in front of Aizawa, hugging himself in a probably unconscious gesture. The last one to arrive, despite the fact he was the closest to Aizawa of them all. "Okay," Aizawa says, trying to will his voice into a more gentle tone. "What is going on?" Yet again, Ida, Uraraka, and Todoroki looked to one another. Midoriya did not move, not making a single beep. It was as if he wasn't even breathing. "If I ask you a question, I expect you all to answer," Aizawa insists. "Again, what is going on?" Ida finally let out a little cough. It seemed like even that costed him more than he was willing to give, but maybe his role as class president was pushing him to be the one to take the lead.
"Sensei," he starts before hesitating with a frown. We don't know.
Aizawa blinks. Again, with the look exchange. That was starting to grate on his nerves. Midoriya, Uraraka says, her voice low, nervously playing with her fingers. He's very upset, but we don't know why. He won't talk. Aizawa sighs, pinching the bridge of his nose. That was something that he could deduce by himself, especially considering that the three of them showed more than one time that they tended to act like the official Midoriya protection squad. Midoriya, your friends are clearly very worried for you, Aizawa says, turning to look at him. Not a single reaction. Why don't you tell us what is wrong? No, she meant literally. Todoroki intervenes in his usual cold tone. A clear way to defend himself, a shield against the world, that voice. Everyone with a pinch of common sense would note, really. He hasn't spoken a single word since yesterday. That was more troubling. What could have sent the boy in such a funk? He knew there hadn't been any major incidents since the work experience week, and if something had happened to his mother, the school would have been informed, since Midoriya would have been a minor with no legal guardian in sight. As far as Aizawa knew, Midoriya wasn't particularly close to any of the other teachers except for himself and Toshinori. That's why it seemed the right thing to do to softly say, "If you don't want to talk with us, maybe you can with someone else. Do you want me to call All Might for you?" That certainly finally shook a reaction out of the boy. He flinched like Aizawa had just whipped him, folding in himself even more for how impossible it seemed, his hands two nervous clamps around his own arms. He turned his head away from them until all they could see was the dark greenish curls. That was no good. To see the boy react with anything less than elated joy at the prospect of spending even more time with his idol would already be strange. But this? And before he could even realize, Aizawa ended up indirectly asking for a membership card of the Midoriya Protection Squad the moment he exchanged a worried look with his other three students, in the exact same way they'd been doing the entire morning. When he entered the teacher lounge, Toshinori was there, sitting at the table with his fingers crossed under his chin, clearly deep in thought. Thank God, Aizawa didn't have it in him to search the whole school for him. Toshinori. He started, not even greeting him. What the hell is wrong with Midoriya? Toshinori jumped like someone came up and stabbed him, turning around. He didn't look too good himself. Not that he usually did, with that hollow face of his and his tendency of coughing blood whenever he pleased. But it was clear that something was perturbing him as well. What do you mean? He asked slowly. The boy is a pale imitation of himself, and for what his friends have told me, he hasn't spoken a single word since yesterday. Aizawa explained. When I mentioned you, he's reacted as if I set a box full of puppies on fire in front of him. Toshinori blinks, and then seems to fold on himself like he's holding up the weight of the world on his shoulders, which he is most of the time. He pushes his palms against his eyes. His fingers are trembling. Damn it. That's not a good response. What happened? Aizawa asks, because Toshinori is his colleague, and Midoriya his student, and frankly, both of them are people he cares for, on a personal level as well, and clearly, he needs to butt his nose in this, since apparently everyone that happens to wield one for all turns out to be an emotionally stunted mess! I told him the truth. Toshinori replies. His voice is flat, almost inexpressive in a way he hadn't heard him use in years. You mean everything? There's only one way Aizawa can possibly react. Fuck. Izuku exists. Somewhere in the back of his mind, he can hear the imitation of a voice. A whisper barely there, trying to tell him to pull himself together. He pays it no mind. Izuku gets up in the morning, goes to school, takes notes, sits at the table with his friends during lunch. He does his training exercises in the afternoons. He goes home and studies for the tests. He sits down with his mother for dinner and then goes to bed. Rinse, repeat.
He eats because that's what he's supposed to do. He drinks because otherwise he will die. He walks with his friends because even if his heart is shattered, there's still some pieces that yell and scream and cry for companionship. He answers when he's asked something using the least possible amount of words. He speaks if he really needs to, but very reluctantly. He listens, but not really. He's there, but not really. He just exists. Some distant part of him sometimes registers that his classmates are catching up, whispering between themselves, asking his friends what is wrong with him. Why is he so, why does he only talk when he's asked a question, and even then the answers are not real answers at all? All Might is there in the afternoon exercises, and that hurts. It hurts more than he can possibly bear. But he does. He bears it. In silence, because that's what he's supposed to do. That's his role now. He accepted it himself. Izuku walked up to the crown, took it, and put it on his head, and now he has to sit on this throne whenever he wants it or not. All Might's chime vibrates to him, but Izuku's does not vibrate back. The written tests are over, and Kacchan is there growling to him about something or the other. Izuku can't really bring himself to care. His lack of reaction sets him off, and Aizawa-sensei ends up having to forcefully detach Kacchan from his collar. His mom is worried, so are Todoroki, Uraraka, and Ida. Worried sick. It's the only thing that still makes him feel alive. He wants to say sorry, to ask them to not worry, that he will be fine. At some point. Maybe. But every time he tries, his voice just fails him. What are you supposed to do when the one constant in your life, the one person you've loved and admired and revered before you even came to the realization that you are a thing that exists in the universe, that one person that literally means everything to you, comes and shifts the weight of the world on your shoulders and then tells you, hey, just FYI, I'm gonna die soon. Can't ride. What are you supposed to do? Izuku exists.
This is a terrible idea. You think I don't know that? If you have any other solution, I will gladly hear it.
Toshinori cards his fingers through that already messy vein equals hair groaning.
This is all my fault. Oh, for the love of it, don't start again.
Aizawa snaps back, irritated.
It had to happen one of these days. It's not like you could keep it from him much longer, not when the boy can literally read you like an open book. I know.
Toshinori replies, his voice low, avoiding Aizawa's eyes.
That's why I told him, but if I had any idea he'd react this badly...
Aizawa holds up a hand, stopping him. They had this discussion almost verbatim at least 5 times in the last 2 days. He had enough. They were sitting basically in the dark, their only source of light a lamp on the desk in the teacher's shared office. The both of them leaning over the mess of papers, knees bumping into one another, discussing, strategizing, deciding how to challenge the students. It was supposed to be only Aizawa's responsibility, technically. But Toshinori looked pitiful whenever he wasn't busy with something. A victim of his own too big, too loving heart. So Aizawa gave him something to be busy with. Of course, these being the tests destined for the students of 1A, Midoriya had to come up at some point. The boy had completely shut down. He was detached. An expressionless doll that acted mechanically, did the things he was supposed to do just because he was supposed to do them, talking when asked to, but never interacting of his own volition. His written tests went just fine, which Aizawa couldn't decide if it was more relieving, since once he'd snap out of it, he won't have to deal with failing grades, or scary. He spoke in private with the 3 of the protection squad, as he mentally labeled them at this point and simply couldn't shake it off anymore, and told them to give him space. Be there for him, but don't force him to talk. Just be there. They asked what was wrong. He'd been honest. I cannot tell you. I know what it is, but I cannot tell you. They looked to one another, silent words passing through them. Don't fail your studies for this now, he said. Keep working hard. Midoriya will be fine at some point. That didn't seem to satisfy them, but it's not like they had much of a choice. So they accepted it and did what they could. They'd walk him in at the start of the day, sit with him at lunch, walk him out. It would have been almost comical the way they looked like three bodyguards, if it wasn't for the fact that it wasn't comical at all. Bakugo tried to provoke Midoriya, searching for a challenge before the physical tests, worked himself into a frenzied rage in front of the absolute lack of any response before Aizawa intervened to stop him. Lucky the protection squad wasn't there, otherwise things could have turned real ugly. Another problem. Bakugo was talented and strong, and certainly not stupid at all. And yet he kept falling down in the same trap, working himself into a useless rage over the tiniest things, unable to step over whatever personal problem he had with Midoriya. That's what sparked the idea in the first place. Bakugo and Midoriya, Aizawa suddenly said, force of desperation, really, against you. That stopped Toshinori in his tracks, a hand frozen midair.
You are kidding, right?
Wish I could, Aizawa replied, and then continued, pensive. Think about it. Bakugo has a problem with his pride, and Midoriya has a problem with himself, and you have a problem with the both of them at this point. This test is supposed to try out the student's ability to cooperate with a partner to overcome an overbearing obstacle. Forcing Bakugo to cooperate with Midoriya will put him in a position in which, whenever he wants it or not, he has to confront his problems and, if he wants to pass, overcome them. Forcing Midoriya to cooperate with Bakugo will push him to get out this wall he has erected around himself and come back to the real world if he doesn't want to take his test. Fighting you will force Midoriya to confront the problem that he's trying to ignore, and will force Bakugo to accept the fact that there are always bigger fish, and that he needs to swallow some of that pride. When he finally had stopped talking, Toshinori was looking at him with his mouth slightly open.
You make sense,
He said faintly.
Why do you make sense?
In this case, I wish I did not. This is a recipe for absolute disaster. But I cannot think of anything else. A long silence, and then...
This is a terrible idea.
You think I don't know that? If you have any other solution, I will gladly hear it. So, here they were. Toshinori self-reproaching, Aizawa stopping him before they could run in circles some more around the Midoriya problem. A deep sigh shakes the hollow frame, thin fingers going through blonde hair for what could possibly be the 1000th time that evening.
I hope you are right, because if this doesn't go well, we will have even more of a mess between our hands.
Toshinori finally says, his voice tired acceptance.
Fine. Bakugo and Midoriya against me.
Aizawa sighs, tiredly massaging at his eyes, writing down the combinations.
I'll bring this to Nezu right away,
he says.
At least if he considers it too risky, we'll have time to think of something else.
Katsuki was at an impasse. On one hand, he had the chance to confront himself with All Might. Finally, it's all he always wanted, to face the top and test himself, determined to climb to it at any cost. On the other, he had to do it with Deku, of all people. When they heard the explanations about how the test was going to work, robots his ass, and Aizawa called their names, All Might stepping up in front of them, he felt a mix of excitement at the prospect and rage about the fact the entire universe seemed hell-bent on pushing him back to Deku all the time, no matter how tired of it. And him he was. Deku didn't seem to have a single reaction, although Katsuki was sure he saw his hands trembling. Speaking of which, Deku was weird as fuck lately. By the way he acted, Katsuki first thought something might have happened to Ingo. Yes, he worried. She was a nice person. Bite him. But Mom told him that the woman was perfectly fine. So Katsuki had no idea what was even wrong with the guy. The bus ride had been a silent, tense affair. All Might kept shooting them little looks as if he expected Katsuki to spontaneously combust and Deku to grow another head or something. Then he explained to them how the exam was going to work. Fight and catch or flee, as if there was even a real choice. And left them at the entrance taking his advantage minutes to prepare in the cityscape they were using as a test ground. At the start of the 30 minutes they entered, walking in the middle of the road. Katsuki was looking around, his unwanted partner silently following him. Oi! He finally says, turning. How come the guy wasn't already trying to talk his ear off with some stupid plan or something? When he turned, he found himself looking into the face of absolute indifference. Deku didn't seem to care in the slightest that A, they were about to fight All Might, and B, if they failed this test, they will end in remedial wasting time getting humiliated. He could already feel the handle on his rage slip away.
What the fuck is wrong with you?
He asks in a growl.
Say something!
Deku blinks at him, his expression not changing in the slightest.
Oi, shithead!
He explodes, grabbing him by the front of his costume.
I'm talking to you!
In front of yet more silence, he let him go with a little push.
Fine, do whatever. I'm going to go ahead and fight him on my own.
And then Deku finally speaks.
Are you really that fucking stupid?
The words made it out of Izuku's mouth low and glacial before he could even realize. He's pretty sure something snapped in him. Broke. If there was still something that could possibly break in his chest. When he got told he had to work with Gachan, he really didn't feel anything. Whatever. Against All Might. The thing inside him snapped then. Izuku's hands were trembling, but he did not react. Gachan immediately took the lead, and Izuku knew that all he wanted was to fight. He silently followed, distantly wondering what was wrong with him, why he felt this sensation, this faraway whistle in his ears that wouldn't leave him alone. Then Gachan said he was going to fight him alone. All Might. Alone! And the words made it out of his mouth. He feels Gachan flinch, turning back around to him slowly.
What did you just say?
The words suggested that if Izuku would dare to speak again, Gachan would explode. A nervous pin in a hand grenade ready to shoot away at the drop of a hat. You know what?
Screw it! For someone as smart as you, you really are an idiot.
Izuku continues.
You think you can fight All Might alone? He could crush you with his pinky!
Gachan darted, grabbed him again.
I'm not a shitty little nerd like you who's too scared to face his favorite hero.
Gachan hisses in his face, voice cruelly twisting the last two words. Another piece of the puzzle fell into place. He was afraid of facing All Might. Was he afraid of facing All Might? The whistle in his ears was louder, a deep but angrily hissing. That's what it reminded him of. Was All Might's choice to face them for this test? Did he want Izuku to fight him? Did he want to fight Izuku? Gachan's usually unreadable light was almost shivering with rage at his lack of response. The sensation felt familiar, and maybe that was it, that strange feeling he felt since that morning, as Izuku distantly realizes that... Right. 5 stages of grief. After denial comes anger. Toshinori is waiting and praying that everything will work itself out as Aizawa had planned. He is giving them some minutes to prepare. He frankly does not believe the two boys will magically start cooperating right away, but he wants to give them at least a chance to try. What he does not expect is to suddenly see young Midoriya dart out from an alley at his left, fast as an arrow, one for all activated. Going straight for him! He's too fast, can't see his face. Toshinori dodges the kick right on time, the boy crashing in the building that had been behind Toshinori only a few instants prior, rising a cloud of dust, debris flying everywhere. Young Midoriya doesn't seem to care, getting back up on his feet, charging at him again in a blur of green light. Toshinori has to dodge a punch, and young Midoriya hits a solid brick wall, the strength of his fist putting cracks into it. Young Bakugo has appeared from the same alley, his face suggesting someone just went and insulted his entire lineage. When he sees Toshinori dodging young Midoriya's frantic attacks, he yells, "Deku, you piece of shit!"
This is not turning well.
This has to be hands down the weirdest day of his life.
I'm not some shitty little nerd like you who's too scared to face his favorite hero.
Deku didn't react at all at those words, apparently. But Katsuki saw it, the minute little twitch of his eye, the expression turning just barely from a cold mask of indifference to something else. What that something was, Katsuki did not know. Then he had grabbed Katsuki's hand in a grip bordering on painful, taking it away. He sidestepped, walking around Kachan. Before he could ask anything, Deku seems to light up. An oppressive energy fills the air, and then he's off, a lightning bolt leaving behind him a single cracked footprint 2 centimeters down in the concrete. Katsuki looks at it numbly before slapping himself out of his stupor and following. What he sees when he makes it to the other side of the alley does not make him happy. That shitty little crap is trying to fight All Might all on his own. He's fast. Too fast. When did this happen? All Might dodges a punch and Deku's small fist lodges itself into a brick wall, creating a deep hole, cracks opening from it, and then Deku takes his hand out like it's no biggie. When did that happen? And turns to All Might, ready to start again, baring his teeth like an angry animal. And All Might is actually putting effort into dodging. All Might is actually putting effort into dodging. Deku, you piece of shit! This was supposed to be his fight! Like Katsuki was supposed to be the only one from middle school to make it to UA. Like Katsuki was supposed to be the real winner of the festival and not a sloppy second best when that shitty half-face refused to fight him properly. Like Katsuki was supposed to be a step higher, and Deku was supposed to stay where he belonged between the commoners. Like how Katsuki was supposed to be above him, and Deku still refused, looking at him with that stupid worried face, asking him if he was okay, telling him he looked like he needed help. The little shit doesn't seem to show a single sign of giving. He's still going at it full speed, forcing All Might on the defensive, destroying the fake city around them every time one of his kicks or punches missed the mark, hitting something else. The man was even trying to be reasonable, telling Deku that he was wasting his time and energies and there was no point in attacking the way he was doing. Then All Might sprung into action. He dodges another fruitless attack, bending his leg, and his knee connects with Deku's stomach with a strength that makes even Katsuki flinch. Deku flies, bounding on the ground with a loud crunch, rolling backwards some more meters before coming to a stop. Shivering, he turns on his side, heaving, and Katsuki thinks he hears him saying something. And he says thinks, because there's no way those words could possibly come from Deku's mouth directed to All Might. And yet he's sure he just heard him say, "I hate you!" The words hit him harder more than any kick or punch possibly could. He recognized the anger, of course. The idea that young Midoriya's attacks could possibly be part of a plan rapidly left his mind. The boy was frantic, desperate, putting too much into every hit, risking too much every time the control of his one-for-all almost slipped. He couldn't manage to look at his face, not as the boy tried over and over and over to hit him fast as a light. Young Bakugo was frozen on the spot, watching, his mouth slightly open. Toshinori had been dodging because if Midoriya landed a hit with the way he was attacking, it would actually hurt. And also to give himself time to think, how do I get him out of this? How do I get them out of this? Young Midoriya was ignoring his words. He tried to call to him to tell him to stop, that attacking for the sake of attacking was useless, that he was wasting his energy. The boy seemed deaf to his pleas. He needed Midoriya to stop, snap out of his rage, and think. His mind a chant of, sorry, I'm sorry. Toshinori dodged one last attack and then countered. His knee connected with Midoriya's soft belly. Soft, too soft. He's so young. Why did I even think it was right to put such a weight on this boy, sending him flying backwards? The boy hits concrete with a painful noise, rolling some more, rising a little cloud of dust as he comes to a stop. He spills, coughing before trying and failing to get back up on his feet. And then he says it clear as day despite his weak voice. I hate you! Toshinori really asked for that, didn't he? Katsuki slaps himself, literally. He's been standing there like an idiot, unable to move. Everything was just so weird. It was like his brain refused to accept what his eyes were seeing. But this was his chance. He would not get a second one. If he wanted to measure himself against All Might, this was it. Deku was still on the floor and All Might was not attacking him. There was something in the air, something heavy, and a small part of him felt like he should go to Deku, make sure his back did not break with the strength of that hit or something. Wait, what is he thinking? Screw him! Deku running towards him, a burning stick in his hand, attacking that stupid pile of sludge. Screw him! His mom saying to him that Izuku still cared. Screw him! Her comments about how he always managed to bring some sort of feeling out of him. Screw him, screw him, screw him! Katsuki dashes. All Might looks shocked when he jumps to Deku, puts him on his shoulder like a sack of potatoes, and sprints away. Okay, what the fuck? He's such a dumbass. He had a chance and wasted it. Wasted it because this little piece of shit. Deku turns to him after Katsuki unceremoniously drops him to the ground, bile on his chin, his eyes unfocused. He's pale as a ghost, Katsuki notices. Was he this pale the entire time? Are you going to go insane again, or are we going to find a way to beat him? Deku blinks, shivering, slowly climbing up to sit straight. He puts a hand on his chest with a full body twitch, and Katsuki thinks he's going to vomit again, before realizing that he's not breathing. Oi, shit, the fuck? Katsuki exclaims, punching Deku's back. That seems to jumpstart him as he takes a painful gulp of air. Breathe, you idiot! Tears collect in Deku's pale eyes as he tries, and mostly fails to get oxygen in his lungs. Katsuki wants to pull at his hair and take it out in desperation. Why had it to be him getting paired with this crazy motherfucker of all people? Okay, now listen and listen well, he says, because something had to be done. I don't know what is wrong with you, and I don't even care, but we can't win if you keep going like this. You're acting absolutely crazy. Whatever your deal is, forget it. This is a battle. He's the enemy, and Katsuki hesitates. He hates this so much. He swallows, feeling like he's actually, literally, physically swallowing his own pride. I can't do it alone. I know he's too strong for me, but I still want to try. Deku's face is turned to him now, something akin to tired wonder on his face. At least it's an expression. At least he's breathing again. If we want to win, and I want to win, we have to do this together. The word burns in his mouth like acid. Do you fucking want to win or not? And then something strange happens. Deku blinks, takes a deep, shuddering breath, and the look in his pale eyes changes. It's impossible to explain with words. Katsuki feels as if he just watched him wake up from a nightmare right in front of his eyes. Kochan, he says, and Katsuki somehow knows that he's back.
Don't call me that,
He repeats as he usually does, rising back up on his feet.
then get up, we got work to do.
A scene from a lifetime ago. Katsuki in the little stream, Deku over him, his little hand offered to Katsuki, asking him if he's okay. Their spots are reversed now. Katsuki takes Deku's hand and pulls him back up on his feet, silent. Watching young Bakugo run away with Midoriya had been surprising, to say the least. When he first dashed, Toshinori had been sure he would go for him. The boy had been shivering in clear anticipation at the thought of having a chance to measure himself against Toshinori. Such a strong, talented, smart boy. If only he'd managed to tone down his prideful streak a bit. But maybe that had been the first step. He watched young Bakugo jump to his partner with gritted teeth and a curse on his tongue, putting him forcefully over his own shoulder and then run. Toshinori waited, giving them time. Maybe that was the wrong thing to do. Maybe he should push them, put pressure on them. But Aizawa said that the test was supposed to try the students' ability to cooperate and overcome a huge obstacle. And Toshinori had the impression that despite being hidden from his eyes, they were doing exactly that. Young Bakugo's action had to count for something. A step forward. A small change. Like a little pebble hitting the surface of a lake. A pebble so small, so insignificant if confronted with the magnificence of the lake, and yet creating a ripple that becomes bigger and bigger. And then Toshinori smiles when both boys come at him together, focused and ready. Determination is written all over their expression. They are really there, working with one another. And when young Bakugo slaps the handcuffs close on his wrist, taking him completely by surprise, a few minutes of struggle later, for the first time in days, Toshinori feels like he did something right. Bakugo and Midoriya, a cheerful automated voice says, "Yes!"